Damon Vickers is our guest. He heads up one of the most successful management firms and investment funds out there, 9 Points Capital Partners. npm.us is the website. I'm Alex Jones. Our websites are Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. And I want to talk about a host of other issues in the time we have left with Damon. I didn't mean to get stuck on the whole population agenda. My point is, whether you believe we're overpopulated or not, the globalists have actually moved to keep the third world in poverty and cause the people bomb, while they're then always selling eugenics and population and one-child policies in the West. And if you really study eugenics, it's not what is publicly taught about improving the race, improving intelligence. It's actually targeting the most intelligent that aren't part of the elites. They call it, the random genetics out there that threatens the global elites' hegemonic empire. And I just morally cannot sign on to China and forced abortion and infanticide and killing babies. And Damon, I don't think if I took you to China and put you in front of a woman,
that I advocated it. I didn't hear any of that. And if it's about keeping the globalist hegemony intact and the Rothschilds and the Bilderbergers and keeping that fine genetic line intact, the truth is that those lines and families, there are real problems with those people. I mean, when you don't intermix family's genetic code, or you have too much marrying amongst cousins, you get some kind of strange outcomes. You get people that are manic depressive, suicidal, and just
you get more psychopaths.
Crazy. Huh?
You get more psychopaths.
You do. I mean, you could take a look at.
Look at royalty. Look how royalty's always going insane, from Egypt to Rome.
That's how they did it. But Alex, for a long period in time, that is how they did it. Cousins married cousins, and that went on for a very long time. It's particularly if your family had money.
But it's still going on.
It still goes on to some extent. Yeah. Well, it's bad genetically, though. You need to have a healthier gene code.
But what I'm asking is, then why do you agree? And I wasn't saying you agree with forced abortion in China. I'm saying I can't. Well, then you have to be against the policy.
I'm against a world and countries and individuals that think that they can act haphazardly and recklessly without there being some responsibility to their fellow beings, whether that be animals or plant life or human beings.
But Damon, here's what I'm saying: if Europe and the United States and Japan are having on average 1.3 children, which doesn't replace mommy and daddy, we don't need food rationing and one-child policies in America.
Well, we don't need it in America, but at this point, America doesn't support itself anyway. We're net importers of food. We can't feed ourselves, and we export worthless.
That's because of government policies paying people not to produce food. That's because of NAFTA and GATT and globalization, which is designed to make the world population dependent on the social engineers.
Okay, all right. So, as a fund manager, I have to think about how I'm going to make money from that, because I have investors and people that I have to report to that want to see capital gains. So I can't determine the direction of the world, Alex. I don't think you can either. I would think we both agree that we don't want move into a world that it's a police state whereby it's very negative and dark. However, we do need we've I think shown that this experiment called democracy has had unintended consequences. And is not really made American people really all that free, although they have the illusion of freedom.
We don't have, even a howling mob of democracy. We have manufactured consent. Damon, shifting gears in the time we have with you here.
No, I agree with that. You're talking about the two parties going against each other and the fantasy of Democrat versus Republican. I totally agree with that. Totally. It is a fantasy.
Let me ask you this. What do you see happening to Obama? Lowest approval rating 1 year in of any president. Democrats turning against him. We're going to get some probably even worse Republican later, and then an even worse Democrat after that. As everything goes downhill. What do you see happening economically, politically in the next 24 months in the United States?
Well, you bring up a good point between the Republicans and the Democrats. I certainly hope that we actually don't swim back to a Republican, and perhaps we have the type of environment where maybe you get somebody that's non-aligned, that's not a part of a fantasy of a Democrat or Republican. And yes, both the Democrats and both the Republicans are controlled entities, and they're controlled entities by either family interests in the case of the Tyson family or the Stevens Investment Bank or others, and it takes a lot of money. It takes a couple of $100 million or more to get elected president. And by the time you actually swear your oath, you have totally sold out whatever soul you had 1,000 times over. You're a soulless hunk of a man by the time you're sworn in. I hope that we get a third-party candidate. That's what I hope. In terms of the U.S., the United States, and the globe on a whole, we've got a lot of debt, sovereign debt, and increasingly we don't have a means or an ability to pay it off. But neither does much of the rest of the westernized world, and that debt is mounting and it's accumulating.
But it's fiat debt made up out of nothing, so
correct.
that the speculators can take over the planet.
Well, they're not going. I don't know what they're going to. If the whole world is wrecked financially, I don't know what the benefit of what would they be taking over, a bankrupt company? What's the value of that, Alex?
Well, see, they're too big to fail, so everything else will fail but them. They'll be the last man standing. So even if they're the wreckage of the ship of state and society, they will be that which all the rats cling to.
I don't know. You could also, look, if I wreck you economically, Alex, let's say Alex Jones is a country, and I wreck you economically, and then I get to take you over, what good is that? What do I got? I got to beat up.
Well, look at military tactics. You get to rebuild it.
I want to take over something that's strong and viable.
No, you get to rebuild. No. The globalists take over strong countries and then use them to exploit the neighbor and to wage war and covert destabilizations.
On a larger scale, though, you could say that our democratic system, in the way that it's based upon allowing everybody to kind of get what they want, and people get elected, and they're beholden to all these special interests, that by the time it's all done with, you've just amassed all this debt because you've had to pay off all the people that got you elected. And
because big government isn't real free market. It allows that crony monopoly capitalism, and then they buy off the howling mob, the horde, to then finally loot the middle class that was left, and then everything collapses. That's what happened in Rome. That's what happens everywhere.
And it is likely to happen again. And we are likely in the process of that happening again. And neither you nor I can likely do much to change that natural course of direction. But what we can do is try to position ourselves financially and try to position ourselves and our families so that we survive and seek to thrive and prosper in the environment that we have, not the environment that we want.
Well, I agree. I mean, I work for a better world, but I also position myself to be in the best possible position. And knowing what's coming in the future, I've been very successful. And these other fools that think buying mainstream television, which is meant to deceive them and to tie them up in false realities, is meant to neutralize them and keep them out of the game. The average yuppie thinks it's cool to spout off the party line of the system, thinking they're smart, like some mindless parrot that's been, taught to repeat something.
Dead on, Alex. Yeah, that is dead on. That's exactly right. That the fantasies that we might have of bashing liberals or bashing conservatives is a game that we play against each other, and it's just ridiculous, and it's just so utterly retarded. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Absolutely. But I think the good news is I think more and more people, Alex, are waking up to that fact. You do a good job of bringing it out to people, of telling them that, and they need to know that bashing, liberal bashing or conservative bashing, this is a stupid game that has no end, but with no ultimate, so we just play each other off each other with real no progress or moving forward. It's ridiculous. We don't even deal with the issues at hand.